existence of aliens is being kept hidden from the public. One man makes it his mission to discover the truth.
Bonkers.
Mr.
Bonkers. Bonkers.
Called by the Hawaiian name Oumuamua, this object continues to baffle scientists. For one, its brightness varied greatly every 8 hours, suggesting that it was shaped either like a very long cigar or else a massive pancake. Space telescopes did not detect any heat or gases coming off the object, so to this day, no one can say for sure why it deviated from its expected trajectory and actually sped up as it was moving away from the sun. For Harvard professor Avi Loeb, the most logical explanation is also the most controversial. He believes Oumuamua was made by aliens.
This is not a popular idea within the scientific community right now, and it's, I think, a problem of the scientific culture where scientists have a problem discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. It's the most conservative thing to assume, and it shouldn't be considered speculative. And so I find the current scientific culture to be unhealthy.
The key in doing science is to get as much evidence as possible, because it can guide you, and sometimes nature's imagination is greater than ours. So as scientists, we really want the most data possible. And the worst one can do as a scientist is to say, I know the answer in advance, I don't need any evidence. That was true in the days of Galileo, when the philosophers knew that the sun moves around the earth, and they didn't want to look through Galileo's telescope. And by that, they maintained their ignorance, and they put Galileo in house arrest. The earth continued to move around the sun, as Galileo was arguing. Reality doesn't care whether we ignore it or not. And so we really want as much evidence as possible, and not to rely on prejudice, not to say it's never aliens, it's always rocks. Because that would resemble a caveman that is used to playing with rocks, and when presented with a cell phone, would argue that the cell phone is just a shiny rock. We don't want to be that caveman. Perhaps it's one point in a grid of objects that are similar to it, that are placed in interstellar space for navigation purposes, to give you your coordinates when you're moving through interstellar space. That's one possibility. Another one is that it's a relay station for communication. Instead of sending a very powerful signal, just like we do on Earth, you can transmit the signal from one station to another. And this is one of the stations along the way. Another possibility is that it's a probe. I find it hard to believe that anyone is spying on us, because it took this object more than 10,000 years to cross the solar system. And 10,000 years ago, we weren't that interesting. I would argue that even now we're not that interesting. Perhaps in the future we'll be more interesting. The other most likely option is that it's just space trash. You know, we sent out Voyager 1, Voyager 2, New Horizons. In a billion years, they will become trash. They will not function anymore. And most objects in space are probably billions of years old. It's a very anomalous object, very peculiar, sort of like walking on the beach. Most of the time you see seashells or rocks that are naturally produced. And in the past we have seen a lot of rocks in the solar system, but every now and then you stumble across a plastic bottle. And this one looks like potentially a message in a bottle. It's the first object that we discovered from outside the solar system, and it doesn't look like a comet or an asteroid that we have seen before. It has a flat geometry, most likely pancake shaped, and also it exhibits an extra push away from the sun that could be due to the sunlight. And we have seen one such object that reflects sunlight and gets pushed without a cometary tail. And it turned out to be a rocket booster from 1966. So this one could be artificially made, but definitely not by us, because it's moving much too fast and was potentially produced by another civilization.
Is your hypothesis accepted by a majority of your colleagues?
Not at all. There is a pushback against the discussion even. There is a taboo on discussing a possible artificial origin. And that I find unacceptable, because we know that half of all the sun-like stars have a planet the size of the Earth, roughly at the same separation. And so if you repeat the same circumstances, you should get similar outcomes. We should not be special. And the only question is, are we the smartest kid on the block, in my mind?